Welcome to Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On with Janice Formicella. I'm Janice Formicella, a breakup coach passionate about supporting others to learn from their breakups, overcome loneliness, love being single, and see the end of a relationship as the beginning of a magical, sexy new chapter in life. I am here each week to share with you the tools that I have learned through my own painful breakups, through hitting rock bottom more than once, and through working with people all around the world to heal their broken hearts. If you are looking for hope and strength to move on from your breakup and resources to enjoy your new life, you are in the right place, and I've got your back. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here this week because we have popular and one of my favorite guest co-hosts here, Brian Dunn, and we are going to be doing something a little different today. We are going to be taking a look at a little social construct that we like to call the patriarchy. We are going to be talking about the patriarchy, what it means for our personal lives, what it means for our romantic lives, for our public lives. We're going to be talking about what a patriarchy detox means, what decentering men means for everybody involved, and perhaps most importantly, what decentering men means for your dating and relationship life. Welcome back, Brian C. Dunn.
Thank you, Janice. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you suggested this topic. It has been really fun to research and think about. And I think that it's really important for our listeners who perhaps want to have healthier relationships in the future, who are curious about just general personal development and how they can begin to love themselves more, center themselves more, although perhaps they haven't thought of it that way, and be a part of the solution rather than a part of the problem. I know that decentering men and deconstructing the patriarchy are perhaps things that people don't wake up every day thinking about, and perhaps don't go into the dating world thinking that this could really be a game changer for them. But we're here today to tell you that it can. Yeah, before we get started, Brian, can you remind everyone your website, and then we're going to get into it?
Yes, I am a certified dating and relationship coach. My website can be found at brian.cdunn.com, and I'm on TikTok and Instagram at MR as in Mr. Brian C. Dunn.
And we've done a lot of great episodes together, some really, really substantive, is that a word? Some really substantial, important topics as far as having healthy relationships and good communication goes. So I will actually put a list of our episodes in the show notes. And you know what? I think I'm going to do some social media around that as well, because we've created some really great content together. And along those lines, Brian, you suggested the topic of decentering men / a patriarchy detox, which fascinated me. So what compelled you to ask to do an episode on this?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Barbie movie last year, and we'll talk about the Barbie movie in a little bit, but that came up and talks about, like, literally the word patriarchy comes up like 9 or 10 times. And then also recently in the public discourse on social media, the topic of decentering men has come up a lot. And these are very interrelated, and of course, capitalism and all sorts of things. But I thought it was just a very relevant, very timely topic. Fits into dating because it is about living your authentic life. And I think that's very relevant to your listeners. But I think patriarchy in particular hurts and limits everyone, including men, even though patriarchy as a system was created by men for the benefit of men. Mm-hmm. But really, it only benefits those in power and wealth at the top. And so we're going to talk about a lot of the ways patriarchy hurts everyone, robs women and men of their humanity, and holds back society. So, like, imagine where we could be as a society in terms of advancement, equality, prosperity, scientific developments, happiness, if things could be more equal and equitable and fair for everyone. What about you, Janice? What made you want to do this topic and made you excited about talking about this today?
Well, first of all, I will say I am a very dedicated feminist. I came from the Mormon church, as I'm sure many people know, and almost as soon as I left the faith, I got introduced to feminism and feminist theory, and woo, it really, really transformed my worldview, and it was very eye-opening as far as realizing the patriarchal establishment in which I had been raised and how that had shaped many of the decisions I had made as a young adult, how it had shaped just like the assumptions and the opinions that I had about life and the world. And it was, yeah, very, very and very special time for me in my life when I discovered feminism. I ended up being a English and women's studies double major. So I'm very passionate about looking at social constructs and how they impact our personal and everyday life. And I've also gone on my own decentering men journey. I would completely say I went through a patriarchy detox that I am riding the waves of today. And also centering myself was completely life changing. And it was not really until I learned to do that that I finally created the life that I was capable of having and deserving of happening. So, and I want that for more of my listeners for sure.
Definitely. And I think what we're going to talk about today is understanding the underlying kind of systems
Yes.
behind the things you talk about in all of your episodes and kind of what we want for women, but everybody to be able to live their lives more authentically rather than according to these systems that try to fit you in a box and tell you what you can and can't do.
Completely. And this is also for men. I have a lot of male listeners, and we also want you to learn how you can do this as well to have healthier relationships and to be a better man. Yes, and it's so true. I do talk a lot on the show about being single, loving yourself, the solo movement. And yeah, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty behind the social constructs that make it even necessary for me to talk on my show about why it's okay to be single and why people might choose not to get married. So, we're going to have two parts of this episode. Part one will be definitions. What are we really talking about? What do all of these fancy academic words really mean? We're going to take a look at patriarchy, matriarchy, misogynism, what decentering actually means, and that's going to be great. And then part two, we're going to talk about what it means to detox from the patriarchy, what it means to decenter men, why men should want to, why women should want this, and for the end result of living a life that you want to live, where you are in the center of your own universe. And we also want to say all of this is completely applicable whether you are single, whether you are in a relationship, whether you are married, whether you plan to be in a relationship or not. We all live within this societal structure. It affects all of us. You might not see it, but it does. These structures prevent people from understanding each other. They keep us from centering ourselves in our own lives. Avoiding looking at them in their power prevents us from understanding one another and having compassion for each other. And it prevents us from examining them and, in turn, making effort to fight against them. We stay in the status quo. And I really want to make sure that I point out this podcast is a very, very inclusive space. I am very passionate about making it so. And for the purposes of this episode, we will often, if not most times, make reference to heterosexual relationships and interactions between men and women. This is partially because we are both aware of the risks that come along with women centering men in their lives, especially romantically, and the way that this structure can prevent healthy relationships and healthy individuals. And it's because Brian and my life experience informs a lot of what we will share today, and that is where our romantic experience lies.
Yes, and I think it's also relevant no matter your sexual orientation, your preferences, kind of however you structure your life, because decentering men can be about decentering relationships, sort of in a way. It could be about decentering capitalism or decentering hustle and living kind of according to what makes you happy. So I think there are things that can benefit and apply to all aspects of our lives.
Thank you. And also just understanding that there are these power structures and that there are, unconscious biases that many of us have. There is oppression and things that keep people from living full lives and succeeding and whatnot. Let's get on to the first topic, and that is Barbie. This is just really rocking so many people's worlds this year. And wow, the fact that it's up for Academy Awards is just really fun. And I do think that we're seeing words like the patriarchy in the media a lot more than maybe we normally do. And it's getting people thinking. Brian, break it down for us. Why is this the case?
Yeah, I really love the Barbie movie. I think it's just kind of a testament to the power of women, and it was a mega hit last year. It grossed nearly $1.5 billion worldwide. It was the biggest film of the year, the 14th biggest film of all time so far, and it was the biggest film ever directed by a woman. And it not
Oh,
only
I
was
didn't know that.
based, it was based on, of course, the toy, but it created a whole world and kind of was subversive against the world, poked fun at Mattel, poked fun at patriarchy, and kind of shone a light on a lot of things. And of course, the America Ferrera speech at the end was kind of very powerful and tear jerking for a lot of
Mhm.
women, a lot of people. So it's a really powerful movie. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go see it. But I just wanted to introduce patriarchy and the whole concept from Barbie because that may be the first time people are sort of hearing it or
Yeah.
hearing it kind of in a bigger way, sort of more in your face way. So, of course, feminism and patriarchy are a big part of the movie. And the society, so a little bit of spoiler, I won't get too much spoiler, but the society within the Barbie world is not a matriarchy, even though all the Barbie characters are in charge. It is, in fact, a patriarchy with the genders flipped. So matriarchies have a different value system, which we will talk about in a little bit. But women are in charge within this Barbie land universe. They do all the jobs while the men are the accessories to the women.
Oh,
So Barbie and Ken end up in the real world for a bit. Small spoiler, but that's kind of the premise of the movie
I
and
don't think you're
everything
spoiling
around.
it for very many people.
But in the real world, Ken discovers a world where men are in charge and women are the accessories and subservient. And he starts saying patriarchy, patriarchy. And so he brings that concept back to Barbie land and things sort of flip around. So if you don't think the world in Barbie land is fair to men, well, that's patriarchy, just with the genders reversed. So the
Mhm.
Kens are treated how women in our real society are treated today. So we'll talk about, like I said, the differences between patriarchy and matriarchy coming up soon. But the other thing is in the movie, the Kens are the stereotypical masculine, what we think of like real men or just kind of men in general. But Alan is kind of doesn't fit the mold. His character is the one that breaks out of the masculine mold, doesn't care about fitting in with like the other guys, with the other Kens. He defies expectations and rules, and he helps the Barbies and helps save the day. Small spoiler, but that's just something to think about when you watch the movie is all these Kens, and then Alan is very different. And it's sort of kind of helps you see and put the pieces together of what it all represents.
And are you trying to be more like Alan, Brian?
Yes, yes,
Fantastic.
definitely.
Well, let's just get this out of the way that talking about all of this, deconstructing the patriarchy doesn't mean that we are anti men, that men are evil, that men essentially are the problem. The system is the problem. And the way that a lot of us go about relationships today are the problem. The way that we still have so much violence against women, that is the problem. Men are not evil or bad. I'm not a man hater because I'm a feminist. I love myself a good man. Let's just, I'll just assure you of that. And we're having a discussion with a good man. So let's make sure to make that clear. What is the patriarchy? Patriarchy is a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. Surely there's plenty of examples of women being very involved in politics and in world events and in leadership today, but really think about it, it's been only recently and it's still the exception. When it comes to male-centric power, patriarchy places men at the center of power structures. And when we think of relationships as binaries, which a lot of people do, that would put the man in the center of that power structure as well. It grants them greater influence in decision-making processes and leadership positions with domination and power as the core tenet. This is just as true today as it was 100 years ago. When it comes to gender roles and expectations, Patriarchal societies often assign traditional gender roles where men are expected to be assertive, competitive, and the breadwinners, while women are expected to be nurturing, submissive, and focused on domestic responsibilities. That's why everyone asks me if I'm going to have kids and not the dudes who are my same age. It also means women are dependent on men for survival. The patriarchy brings with it inequality and discrimination. Patriarchy perpetuates gender inequalities, leading to the marginalization and subjugation of women. It can result in disparities in areas such as education, employment opportunities, and political representation. So that is the structure we are talking about. And yes, it does go into the personal sphere a lot. And let's just also remember today, most, if not all, societies are patriarchies with the men in power, women fighting for and earning more access to power. Like this is definitely the case. But really, I can't think of even a very egalitarian society taking place today. There's probably more examples of egalitarian societies today that we could get into. But yeah, I would say in general, we're looking at patriarchies across the board. It's just the facts.
But a matriarchy, different from patriarchy, it's not just the gender swap. There's not domination and power and subjugation. It's more about cooperative and egalitarian values. So matriarchal societies tend to prioritize cooperation, consensus building, communal decision making. They promote values of nurturing, consensus, interdependence, rather than hierarchical power structures. So it's important to note that while patriarchy and matriarchy are often discussed as binary concepts, the real world societies that exhibit matriarchy traits, they exhibit a wide range of power dynamics and gender relations that fall along a spectrum, incorporating elements of both systems. So matriarchal societies can seem foreign or alien, kind of like science fiction. Like when you see a picture of this newly discovered deep sea creature that looks like it's from Avatar or some sci-fi movie. It's like, this is how deep we are within patriarchy. But the whole point is to question things, ask why them, why not? So just you're talking about your detoxing and your journey through feminism and in college and women's studies. It's questioning and kind of deconstructing, decolonizing our thinking.
Which is hard because, as you're going to speak about now, a lot of this is so subconscious. A lot of us do not even see it. I mean, it's hard to even just think back in the last day. I'd have to really think hard, like, where did I see the patriarchy? Where did I see power disparities? And so that's another reason we're doing this, is like really bring it to people's attention. Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about patriarchy versus matriarchy and how misogyny, as prevalent as it is actually like I guess, the hardcore enforcement of patriarchy, right?
A really great resource for looking at patriarchy and where it came from and when it started, because it isn't all of our human history. But there's a book called The Patriarchs, The Origins of Inequality by Angela Saini. And so this book is really fantastic. It's a pretty quick read. It walks through prehistory to modern times. It's very accessible and broad reaching across a lot of history, prehistory, a lot of different cultures around the world. As you mentioned, misogyny is something that hopefully we've all heard, and it's normally thought of as just a term of hating women, but it is actually a policing and an enforcement tool of the patriarchal systems. So just like other forms of bias, a lot of this is subconscious, just inherent and kind of internal unconscious belief systems, because we've been raised and conditioned within the system through society, through our upbringing, through religion, to accept things as being this way. So it may be hard to accept because you don't see it. Like a lot of people say, there is no patriarchy. We've had like people say, there's no racism anymore because Barack Obama was president. It's like, there's no sexism or patriarchy anymore because women are on the Supreme Court or women get elected. So it's
when it comes though to women hating, I would challenge people to actually look around and look at, the objectification of women in the media and in pop culture, the degradation of women, the horrible things being said about women, and just the perpetuation of violence against women in America. Women get killed every day by their partners. Women get raped and their rapists go free. A lot of people would say that that is a very direct example of women hating. It's just the fact that we're so unsafe.
Yes, and a lot of times that can come from a place of, it's not hating. I love women. I just think they're inferior and owe me, like I'm entitled to them. But the traditional definition of misogyny is dislike of or contempt for or an ingrained prejudice against women. But there is a really great expanded definition from the author, from the researcher Kate Mann, from her book Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny. So she calls misogyny the law enforcement branch of a patriarchal order, which has the overall function of policing and enforcing its governing ideology. So misogyny, up in her definition, misogyny upholds the social norms and expectations of patriarchies by policing and controlling them, whereas sexism refers to justifies these norms largely via an ideology of supposedly natural differences. So women are naturally this way, hardwired this way, men are naturally this way, with respect to their talents, interests, proclivities, etc. So sexism taken alone involves believing in men's superiority to women in masculine coded high prestige domains such as intellectual, academics, sports, business, politics, and the naturalness or even inevitability of men's dominance. So misogyny by itself involves anxieties, fears, and desires to maintain the order. It's like stay in line, know your place. You're acting against the rules set out for women or men in the society.
Thank you so much, Brian. And I think that everybody can play a part in stopping this and to, kind of equaling the playing field a little bit more. But even more than that, just allowing women to live more fulfilled, joyful lives and men as well, and for men and women to connect on a deeper level and come from a place of understanding and respect. And like I keep saying, a lot of that starts with one of the most personal things in our lives, and that is our relationships. But before we get into all of that, we're going to take a look at a bunch of examples of how misogyny shows up in our day-to-day lives and in society and in our jobs. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to get into a bunch of examples that will be very eye-opening to people. Maybe some things that you don't really think about are the execution of the patriarchal system. We call it misogyny. Nothing shatters your life like a breakup. And the feeling of a broken heart is real. I know that it seems impossible right now, but there is hope and there are ways to heal. I would love to work with you one-on-one to heal your broken heart and put your breakup behind you. My personalized coaching programs are designed to pinpoint what will be most effective in helping you to move forward and make this breakup a part of your past. I believe in you. Message me at breakupspodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram at breakupspodcast. And let's connect about creating a magical plan of action to get this breakup in your rear view mirror. Welcome back, everybody. So we've talked about what misogyny is. We've talked about what the patriarchy is. And we're going to eventually get into what a patriarchy detox looks like. But before we do, we should talk about some examples of what a non-detox looks like. We're going to talk about what it looks like to be drunk on the patriarchy before we talk about detoxing from the patriarchy. So I'll get into it. First of all, I'm sure that the concept of gender roles will not be unfamiliar to most listeners. These are things that we are absolutely raised to believe about the other gender and to believe about ourselves. And let's just face it, boys are leaders. I absolutely grow up within this construct, in my faith, in my home, absolutely in the schools I went to. I would say that this is what I saw. Girls who want to be leaders are actually bossy or bitchy. Women are emotional. Men are rational. These are also things that we hear all of the time. And I think we're both emotional, but definitely you hear people saying a lot that women are more emotional and also that men think with their head more, which I just think is stupid. Also, along the same lines, we hear a lot of people say women are crazy. And again, they're emotional, they're out of whack, they're high strung. If they have opinions or if they're bringing up issues, a lot of people will say that, a woman is being bitchy to her team or in her role if she exerts herself. If she exerts herself, especially with male partners, if she asks for to participate, if she asks for accountability. These are things that can put a target on a woman's back pretty quickly. And I think that we learn not to do this pretty young as girls. And we do carry it into our relationships and into our professional lives for sure.
And women who do speak up to their male partners, oh, she was nagging me, the old
Yeah.
ball and chain, like drama, when it's just a normal part of having a relationship and bringing up something and wanting somebody to have accountability or participate in the relationship. Oh, it's such a nag, always
Yeah.
nagging me to do the thing that she asked me a month ago that I didn't do, and she has to keep reminding me.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Instead of framing it in a way that could be about communication and agreements between you and your partner, it is, yes, nagging.
Other
Hmm.
ways misogyny, a few other ways misogyny can show up are saying that women can't be trusted with power, like being president because of their emotions and hormones, when men are susceptible to anger, which is an emotion, anger and rage and losing control, like road rage, punching walls, throwing controller when you lose a Call of Duty,
Oh
or like
my.
even riots in the streets and burning cars, flipping cars when your sports team loses or even when it wins. So men are just emotional. We're just emotional, at least in today's society, in different ways. But I think anger and revenge and just kind of aggression is just as, or even more emotional because there's a lot of lack of control over these angry outbursts.
Yeah, and lots of men I know and have seen in my life throw temper tantrums. And then I feel like people kind of accept it and almost caretake him after he does it. There's kind of more understanding for that type of ridiculous emotional behavior in my experience.
And the fact that emotional, quote unquote, like the adjective is used to describe crying. So women are emotional because they cry. A man gets emotional if he cries, feels sad about something, but we don't tend to use that for angry outbursts.
So true. Yeah, you're blowing my mind. All right.
But another way misogyny comes up is misogyny as in reinforcing and policing, trying to enforce gender roles and women as subservient is asking women when they're going to get married. Why don't you have kids yet? If you don't settle for whatever, you're going to end up growing old with 17 cats. And so that is all about centering men and marriage as the ultimate goal and role of women is you got to get married and have kids. That's your purpose.
Yes, we're taught from a very, very young age to fantasize about that and for that to be the goal. Men are not brought up that way. Men are not socially constructed to think of marriage in the same way. And we're going to get deeper into that as we go along.
It's even sort of the opposite for men, where it's about avoiding relationships, avoiding commitment, get laid, get lots of numbers, kind of proving your prowess, your sexual prowess by having a lot of experience with women. So it's sort of the opposite and ingrained in us from childhood, basically. But part of that is men feeling entitled to women's bodies, entitled to sex. And you talked about this earlier, objectifying women and reducing women to objects. So this comes from and includes like sex shaming, purity culture, terms like whore, hoe, slut, with no equivalent for men. Like men who have a lot of sex, they're not sluts, they're not, those other terms. But a woman even enjoying or wanting sex can be shamed by, using these words, or even like walk of shame. Like a man coming home from a one night stand, there's no walk of
Totally.
shame for a man, but for a woman, what is shameful about having sex? So there's even the just within religion, within purity culture, the analogies of you don't want to have too much mileage. Like, would you rather have a new car with no mileage or high mileage? And like comparing women to cars, inanimate objects with mileage, or the chewed gum analogy
Yep.
that sometimes is used to indoctrinate girls to think, oh, if you're a piece of gum and if you let somebody chew you up, nobody else is going to want you.
Yes, thank you so much for all of those examples. Yeah, I actually had someone tell me the other day that he thought I was more like a man because I liked sex so much. I'm like, okay. I wasn't aware that this was something so inherently masculine. Now let's talk briefly about what I would think would be a fairly obvious example of the execution of misogyny, and that is victim blaming. I know that a lot of people have had their eyes open to this, and there's more awareness about it perhaps than there ever has been. However, I don't believe that that means it doesn't exist less than it ever has been. In fact, I think it's just as prevalent today as it ever was. I've done an entire episode on victim blaming that I will put in the show notes where I talk about my experience at being victim blamed. I have my friend Christine Lalonde come on and talk about her experience with victim blaming. We talk about what it is, what you can do to stop it. As I said, that will be in the show notes. Go and look at it. I think it might be really eye-opening to you, even if you know what the concept means. It's very, very, very prevalent. In fact, everybody, please go and look at the documentary Victim Suspect. It's an entire documentary about how some of the women who have tried to report their assaults have actually ended up being arrested and prosecuted for supposedly making false claims that ended up not being false at all. And it really goes to show how the system fucking enforces this and makes it so scary for anybody to speak out. And yeah, it shows how victim blaming is just so enforced at like every single system of the home and government, the judicial system. So yeah, go check it out. It's called Victim Suspect.
And that can look like, well, what were you wearing? What was she
Yeah.
wearing? How drunk was she? Did she say no strongly enough or politely enough? What did she do to cause him to act like that? So
Yeah.
it's putting the onus on the woman who was the victim rather than the man who perpetrated the
Yes.
act.
And when it's not just assault, it's also domestic violence victims as well. I mean, the first question anybody ever wants to ask is why did she stay? And that's, putting the responsibility or the blame on her for what her abuser ended up doing. Of course, and along the same lines, demeaning and degrading things associated with women and girls. A major part of masculinity in male culture is also policing other men, defined by what a man cannot be. It starts from adolescence and what we are taught about being a real man. And that includes don't be like a woman. I mean, men are teased and called all sorts of girls' names if they get quote unquote emotional. And of course, everybody will be familiar with the example of don't throw like a girl, don't, yeah, act like a girl. And also along the lines, there's also a big focus on not being gay. I think that boys are taught that and hear that from a very, very young age. And a lot of people also equate being gay with being feminine. And yeah, the whole thing gets conflated. And these are like very destructive messages that boys and girls hear.
Like you said, adolescence, usually that's middle school, start to come into their own and trying to fit in by not being something else. And then if you stand out, if you speak out, if you don't fit within the man box culture, kind of these rules for boys and men, then you get teased and then you get ostracized. And so it's just kind of a reinforcing staying within the rules of what it is to be a man and staying within the hierarchy.
And for a lot of men, I think they never truly get to know themselves, or they don't get to know themselves until later in life than maybe they could. And this goes also back to what are appropriate activities and hobbies and pop culture and things that you expose yourself to, like what is in the boys' realm and what is in the girls' realm, and what does it mean maybe if you like something that's in the girls' box.
And this goes back to what we talked about a little bit. We touched on is like cutting off a piece of ourselves, losing our humanity. Because if you're trying to fit in with the rules of what it means to be a boy or a man or a woman, and you are cutting off parts of you that are natural and innate to fit in, then you are cutting off actual parts of your authentic self. And then you, like you said, you sometimes may come back to those later on. You realize I have this whole part of myself that I've had to shut off because I couldn't risk, I didn't want to risk kind of being ostracized or not being cool enough or man enough.
And I think some men or some boys probably feel really alone because they just simply can't relate to some of these things that are considered to be so in the realm of what they're supposed to be relating to and enjoying. And that definitely makes me sad. And then, of course, men police other men who are maybe overly or who are respectful to their partners and invested in their relationship. One of the terms I hate the most that is pussy whipped. It's just ridiculous that a man would be made fun of because of being invested in his partner or in the relationship and maybe making their partner's happiness a priority in life.
And definitely online, you see this policing of other men in social media, where I myself have been called a lot of these a lot of times. But if you don't stick up for men and put women down, or you agree with, kind of the facts of, and the statistics and the data, if you're not on the side of men, then people call you simp or a cuck, or
Oh my.
these homophobic terms, a wannabe woman. I had one man who it was even about just kind of a situation he was in, and I asked some questions about it. He was like, I have more testosterone in my pinky than you have in your whole body, and
Whoa.
I'm a pilot and all this. And just so kind of, we could do a whole other episode or series on like men and masculinity and kind of hierarchy and proving you're man enough. But just this kind of dominance hierarchy among men of, if you like women, or you are respectful towards women, or you do things like that, then it makes you simp or a cuck
It's
culture.
almost like the goal is not to be in a happy, healthy relationship where you would respect your partner and question some of these things, or maybe even think from her perspective. It's not really about the relationship to these men, but more about the ownership.
Yes.
Hmm.
And that gets back into misogyny, patriarchy, men feeling entitled to women. And when they don't get access to women because they're not very likable, then they lash out at women, lash out at other men who they do see as having success.
So, Brian, let's talk a little bit about benevolent sexism. I think I can conceptualize it pretty well. And so I was glad that you put it in here. But can you kind of just break it down for the audience and put it into layman's terms?
Yeah, definitely. So when I brought up like the original definition of misogyny, which is kind of a contempt for or hatred of women, a lot of sexism and misogyny can be wiped away with, well, I love women, but I think but the underlying belief and the result of the behavior, or the whatever it is feeling women are inferior and kind of enforcing the hierarchy of men above, women below. So benevolent sexism means you're assuming, or you're applying a positive trait, but it's kind of an inferior trait. But it could be still a positive in tone, but with the same goal of controlling and subjugating women. So that could look like women need to be protected and provided for because they're soft and weak and dependent on men because they can't work, and their nature is to have babies and stay at home. So we have to protect them and provide for them. But that has not everyone, some women may want to stay home. That's fine. That's a choice, but that limits women's agency and freedom, and instilling kind of seemingly beneficial, but kind of a limiting and subjugating way of classifying a group of people.
Like, and
It
also
looks,
I hear a lot of like women, people would say women are naturally better with children.
yeah,
Mhm. Like
they've
it's
had
meant
to
to be a
be.
compliment, but in a lot of ways, it's not. And in a lot of ways, that's justifying why we do put them in these roles where that responsibility is largely up to them, whether or not they really are driven to have it be.
And relieves men of responsibility
Yeah, yeah.
of staying home and kind of being a good father. It can also look like women should stay home because they are, like you said, more loving and nurturing. They're hardwired. That comes up a lot. Like, well, it's biology. They're hardwired to be good caretakers, cleaners, and cooks, even though we have most of the world famous chefs, cooks are men.
Mhm.
And then like some gender norms, and so gender norms as a social construct of talking about like men are strong, capable leaders, dominant, rational providers and protectors, but women are just nurturers. They're emotional, they're vulnerable, compassionate, passive, submissive. A lot of these kind of beneath the surface are sort of hierarchical and saying men are better. Like, women are leaders. There's plenty of awesome women leaders, strong, capable. You can't have rationality and reason and thought without knowing your emotions. Otherwise, you are allowing the emotions to control you and control your decisions. But these define what men and women should be, and it polices and punishes anyone, including men, who don't fit in or adhere. So we talk about from adolescents, from boys and girls. But this often benefits men in patriarchal society by keeping men within the dominant role. Men are leaders. We should have power. Women are emotional. They shouldn't have power, and so on and so on.
And again, it goes back to relationships in the bedroom and everything that we're going to dive so deeply in part two. Thank you for all of that, Brian. I really wanted to point out, I think that we've talked quite a bit about how it impacts women and society in general. I was really glad that we talked about the men policing other men. I think that that does hold men from getting in touch with not just their sensitive side, but how they can step up in their relationships and kind of and examining how good of a partner they can be. Because yeah, they have something subconscious that tells them that that's just not what they do, and maybe they'll be ridiculed for it, or simply just that other men aren't prioritizing this, so maybe I shouldn't be either. But I want to read something um, from the American Psychological Association that I really liked when I came across this or when Brian shared it. And that is research that has shown that all of these systems can be just as harmful to men. The article says the main thrust of the subsequent research is that traditional masculinity, marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression, is, on the whole, harmful. Men socialized in this way are less likely to engage in healthy behaviors. Men with the strongest beliefs about masculinity were only half as likely as men with more moderate masculine beliefs to go on preventative health care. The more men conformed to masculine norms, the more likely they were to consider as normal risky behaviors such as heavy drinking, using tobacco, and avoiding vegetables, and to engage in these risky behaviors themselves. This masculine reluctance towards self care extends to psychological help. Men who bought into traditional notions of masculinity were more negative about seeking mental health services than those with more flexible gender attitudes. I wanted to highlight this because I believe that there's been more awareness raised around the fact that more men would benefit by getting mental health support, and that there are a lot of men who are really struggling out there, but we discourage them because of so many of the messages that we send boys about what it means to be a man. And a lot of people consider this to be a real health crisis right now, that so many men are refusing to get help, or maybe don't know that they can, or what that would look like, or just are simply afraid to talk about it.
And definitely, I think that even shows up in just the old trope that men won't stop and ask for directions. Although we have GPS now, and we don't need to stop and ask for directions when we're driving, but it's asking for help, admitting you don't know something. So trying to be independent and know it all and be okay leads to worse health outcomes. And a lot of times it's the women, the wives in the relationships that are making the doctor's appointment, encouraging them to go, encouraging them to eat more healthy meals to extend their life. And that's why men who are married live longer. One of the reasons is because they have a loving wife who cares about their health and kind of pushes them, encourages them to take better care of themselves.
Yeah. A lot of men in relationships might not even realize that they do give over a lot of the caretaking power, I suppose, to their female partners. And definitely that's really not even allowing a man to be fully actualized. And it's also not allowing the relationship to be fully actualized.
And that's to our point of our discussion in these two episodes, the centering of the men. Like, men need a woman to take care of them, and women are put in the role of centering the man and taking care of his needs, making sure his health is taken care of.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I've seen it and I have experienced it, like 1,000%. All of the stereotypical dynamics that could happen between a man and a woman in a long-term relationships are things that I have faced and things that I struggled with a lot. I mean, when I had my feminist awakening, I was in a long-term relationship, and it made me really rethink a lot of the dynamics. And as woke as I think he was, as woke as I think he thought he was, it caused so many conflicts, and he was so resistant to it. And it kept me down for sure. And a lot of trust was lost as well. Now let's really get to male centering and what it means to decenter men, and the basis of what we're going to go into in part two. Let's start with why these are assumptions, why men even subconsciously operate in the world this way. In other words, why do men expect to be centered? And as we've touched on, it is simply how we are all raised. Boys are to be pampered and coddled, And girls are raised to cook and clean and socialize and take care of everything. And also, I like that you put this in here, Brian. They're also kind of meant to take care of like the emotional regulation of the family. I was the oldest in my family, and I'm also a girl. And I can definitely say that a lot of this fell on me. For sure. There was a lot more household responsibilities that me and my sister were given, and also just a lot of statements constantly made about how everybody was looking at me to set the example, or I needed to do this or be in a good mood, or even just keep my mouth shut because, my brothers and sisters were being influenced by me, and not really on my brothers who were very close in age to me. Why do women center men? I really think a lot of people may be challenged by this concept, challenged by the names of the episode, think that they're not being a part of the problem, think that this is a little crazy, think that they definitely do not center men in their lives. But I think that it's more common than you think. And I think that maybe you do in ways that you're just not aware of. So, first of all, like we said about men, we are raised in the culture of patriarchy. And so a lot of us subconsciously do it just for that reason. We are, I think most of us are raised, and I do like that parents are kind of fighting against this these days, but I was definitely raised in within the construct of men work and provide, women have babies, take care of children. Lovely things to do, of course, but it was very two separate roles is how I was raised. And so it's just ingrained in us. And what I think is one of the top reasons, the overwhelming emphasis put on the joy that having a partner will bring women, that having a husband will bring women, that having the marriage, having the house. There is such an emphasis placed on how this is going to just make your life. And this is really the main thing to strive for. This is seriously portrayed as like the biggest goal and the most important thing to achieve in life. Some of the most popular shows that are still people are still flocking to and loving are centered around this concept. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm glad that Sex and the City is having a revival, but that show is so problematic when it comes to this idea that this is what a woman should strive for, and this is what's going to bring you the most joy, and also what people will be most excited for you about, which I think we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Not so much now, but used to be you go to the grocery store, Cosmo cover 10 ways to keep a man, 10 ways to please a man in bed. Just all about how to center men, please men. Whereas for men, it's the magazines and the self-help is about how to succeed, how to build a better life, be stronger, how to get women, how to get laid, but not how to be a good husband, a good father. So you can see the dichotomy there. Women centering men, men centering themselves.
And as again, we're going to talk about in the next part, is it's just basically running your life thinking about the end goal being marriage and not feeling fulfilled and complete until then. And it's not necessarily your fault if you're a woman who really, really desires marriage and a relationship and feels like that's become a priority in your life. I mean, I'm a what we call a social constructionist, and that would be the perfect example. We're almost brainwashed to think of things this way.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting married, settling down, having kids, raising a family. But like you said, it's the if I get this, then I will be happy versus we want to talk about how do I find happiness in life? Maybe that's a part of it, maybe it's not, but how do I prioritize myself and my own well-being, figure out what fits into that versus going after this goal that society, religion, everything has taught us is the goal for women, and that will guarantee you happiness when it may not.
That's absolutely true. It may not. And if you're centering men, you'll have even a less likely chance that it will, because there are some unhealthy dudes out there. We are not brought up to know how to navigate that. A lot of us are unprepared to have a healthy relationship. And yeah, because of these constructs, it could kill you to end up with the wrong man. Let's just be real here. What about internalized misogyny? I know that this was important for you to talk about. So, what are your thoughts on this, Brian?
Yeah, so misogyny, we talked about being the policing and enforcement arm of patriarchy, kind of reinforcing gender roles. And it's not just men who can be misogynistic. There can be internalized misogyny, just as there can be internalized racism or classism or whatever, kind of looking down or holding the same beliefs, reinforcing the same beliefs. So for women, internalized misogyny can look like being indoctrinated and an accomplice to those systems, enforcing gender roles by competing for men, putting other women down, taking part in these sex shaming, slut shaming, kind of body shaming. You're not fitting within the norms and the rules for women, so I'm going to put you down in order to try and raise myself up to gain access to a man or like favor within the structure.
And I have
And
actually seen this play out. Women still today, people outside of my social network, but people who I'm very, very aware of and know personally who have had friendships completely destroyed and blown up because of competing over a man or somehow kind of stealing the man from the other woman. And it definitely still happens today. I know of one story that of someone I know, I just heard of it last week. And also, this is an example that some people may not think of. But when we talk about adultery, I often hear the conversation being, is it the other woman's fault, or is the woman to blame just as much as the cheating husband is? I hear a lot of people kind of assuming when it comes to adultery that it would be a married man, with another woman, and the conversation being, well, do you blame her? Is what she did just as bad? And whereas if it's a woman, a married woman, you don't really hear a lot of people saying, well, is what he did, is the man she cheated with also to blame? I mean, think about it,
yeah,
everyone.
sometimes the wife still gets mad at the other woman and sort of lets the man off the hook.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
she
exactly.
tempted him, she tried to steal him away, kind of thing.
Yes, yep.
The kind of last example are what's become more popularized lately, kind of the pick me girls
Yes.
who try to fit in with the stereotypes of what a woman should be. And then
Hmm.
just like real recently, trad wives, especially on social media, but like traditional wives were like, I'm not a feminist. I can cook kind
Yeah.
of thing. And so it
Hmm.
kind of looks like I can do all of these traditional things where feminists didn't say, don't do that. You shouldn't do that.
It's true.
Stop doing that. It's, you shouldn't be forced to because you're a woman. So
It makes me sad because I do hear a lot of women today saying, I'm not feminist, but, or some people who have who have misconceptions about feminism and that somehow it's about putting men down in order to elevate women. And it kind of breaks my heart because that's not the purpose at all. That is not what we sit around and talk about at all. It's about equality and equity for everyone. And
and
uh,
ending gender-based oppression. Yeah.
yes. Hmm. And I also think that it's the patriarchy that has convinced some women that that's what it's about. Because I think that some men think that there's a lot to lose by increased awareness around feminist topics. And so, yeah, somehow now it's like we have to stand up for even what it means. Like I said, it makes me sad. Sometimes I see it in the ex-woman community, and yeah, that's what I'm here for. Raise awareness and educate people.
Yeah.
But again, I do think that this would be a little internalized misogyny. If you're a woman who can't say that she's a feminist, that's a subconscious and yeah, very internalized and really fighting against you.
Whatever makes sense for you, we should have the ability to make those choices for ourselves. And that's what we talked about a little bit today, but the next episode will be decentering men. But that is about choosing the way you want to live and not living according to some other rules.
Yes, and choosing, and I would hope that you would want to have a joyful, exciting life where you feel complete and whole without a relationship, and where you feel that you are the center of your universe, and that if you should decide to bring someone else into it, that it adds to it and not that it's completing you. Yes, and then you can, yeah, really go off and yeah, live the life you want, but the life that you want, just you, or just the essence of you. Like, what does your most authentic self really, really want? And I think for a lot of women, getting to the core of that can really only come when we learn how to decenter men in our lives and just get in touch with what drives us and what we see our future looking like as our own soulmate. So again, regardless of what choice you make about life or lifestyle, I'm getting more and more passionate about the solo community that I'm involved with. So regardless of what lifestyle or relationship style you choose or do not choose, centering yourself in the decision-making process rather than centering men will lead you to a more fulfilled life every single time. That's what we are going to talk about in part two. In part two, we are going to dive into what it means to decenter men and how this benefits women and men and relationships and communities and friendships and how to actually live a life that decenters men in dating, relationships, and more. We're going to talk about decentering men in the bedroom. We're going to talk about decentering men in general. We're going to talk about dating apps and how you can decenter men when you're going out and trying to meet people. What else do we have coming, Brian?
And the whole point is just to make this clear, decentering men is not cutting men out from your life. It's about making them not the priority. You're putting yourself as priority. How do you integrate men, if that's what you're interested in? How do you integrate them into your life? Again, without having them be number one, and then you are there to find somebody to serve and to submit to.
If you're the happier you are, the better relationships you will have. And the more, if you know that you are your own universe and you know that you are okay with or without a relationship, you will just generally be more confident and just happier in life. And, I also think that it makes for better sex, better friendships, and a lot of other kind of consequential things that will happen when you start to live life this way. And I do also think that it's a big shift. And I think that it can be kind of confronting for a lot of women. So when we come back for part two, we're going to break it all down. We're going to give really practical advice and tips on how to do this. And I hope a dose of inspiration for why you might want to take on this challenge. Everybody, keep your eyes on this space because I am dropping part two in just 2 days. We'll see you then.